For this week, I kind of want to move away from the elements of setting, and I actually want to do a psychoanalytical critique of my novel Dracula. Now, there are many different ways that you can go about a psychoanalytical critique, but the way I decided to go about it was a Freudian approach. Now, Sigmund Freud is the psychologist that lends his name to the Freudian approach, and if you've ever heard anything about Freud, or if you know anything about him, it's probably his theory of the unconscious, or his idea that sexual desires are the motivation for most human actions. And there's one scene in particular in my book that really lends itself to a Freudian critique. Dracula had given Jonathan, our narrator, a warning not to fall asleep in any of the rooms in the castle other than his guest room. And not heeding his captor's warning, Jonathan falls asleep in one of the hidden rooms that he finds on an exploration of the castle. When he falls asleep in the room, he ends up having what he thinks is a terrible nightmare, where three beautiful young vampires, well, they don't say they're vampires, but it's kind of obvious, try to seduce him and try to kill him, ultimately. There's one point where one of the young vampires leans in to bite his neck, and it's at this point that I realized that vampires really give in very easily to the desires of their id. The id is like that kind of devil that sits on your shoulder when making a moral decision. It's all of those things that you know you shouldn't do, or your desires that are hidden deep within your mind. And this kind of, when I had realized this, it made me think of another scene previous to this one where Dracula walks in while Jonathan's shaving, and this kind of startles Jonathan, and he cuts his cheek. And upon seeing and smelling the blood, Dracula kind of can't control himself. He goes and actually attempts to attack Jonathan, and the only thing that saves Jonathan from this attack is the crucifix that was given to him on his way to see Dracula. But this scene, now that I'm speaking of, the three young vampires that try to seduce Jonathan, kind of tie together this whole idea that vampires are really at the mercy of their own self-control. And it's clear that these vampires don't have much self-control, because they're all kind of trying to get at Jonathan, trying to kill him and drink his blood. And this is just so easily taken apart by Freudian critique, because this kind of relates back to the whole idea that Freud had that sexual desires fuel human action. Well, in this case, not so human, but the idea is still the same.